The morning started with spit. Eliza felt it hit her cheek before she heard Martha Dalton's laughter, shrill and sharp as broken glass. She didn't wipe it away. Learned years ago that reacting only made it worse, gave them what they wanted. So she kept her eyes down, kept walking through Forge's Crossing with her basket of mending, pretended the wetness sliding down her face was just rain. Except it wasn't raining. Whore's daughter, someone muttered as she passed. Didn't matter who, could have been any of them. The town had decided what she was before she could walk. Her mother, whoever she'd been, had left Eliza on the church steps wrapped in a flour sack with nothing but a copper locket and a name pinned to the cloth. No explanation, no apology, just abandonment, neat and permanent. The Reverend's wife took her in. Not out of kindness, Constance Mercer made that clear from the start. Out of Christian duty, she'd said, which apparently meant Eliza owed her a debt that could never be repaid. 14 years of scrubbing floors, mending clothes, eating scraps, sleeping in the cellar. 14 years of being reminded she was charity, burden, mistake. And now, at 18, she was something worse, worthless. Girls got no prospects, she'd heard Constance tell the baker's wife last week, voice carrying through the thin walls. Too plain for marrying, too weak for hard labor. Don't know what I'll do with her. Eliza knew. She'd seen it in Constance's eyes for months now, calculation, cold and sharp. The same look she got when pricing fabric or counting coins. She turned down Timber Street, heading toward the seamstress shop where Mrs. Chen might have worked. The town was waking up around her, hammers against wood, horses clopping past, men shouting about nothing. Forge's Crossing sat at the edge of civilization, where the railroad hadn't quite reached and wouldn't for another year. It was the kind of place that attracted two types: people running from something and people with nowhere else to go. Eliza was both. The seamstress shop was closed. A handwritten sign said, "Back Tuesday." Today was Thursday. She stood there, basket growing heavy, trying to figure out what to do next. The mending inside represented 3 days of work, coins she desperately needed. Without them, well, look what the wind dragged in. Eliza's stomach dropped. She knew that voice. Thomas Pritchard, the deputy marshal's son, flanked by his usual pack of bored, cruel boys with too much time and not enough sense. "Heard your mama's looking to offload you," Thomas said, circling her like a dog with a cornered rabbit. "Says you eat more than you're worth." "She's not my mama." The words came out before Eliza could stop them. Thomas grinned. "That's right. You're nobodies, aren't you? Just a leftover nobody wanted." The other boys laughed. One of them, Jacob, the butcher's son, knocked the basket from her hands. Mending scattered across the muddy street, white linens landing in horse dung and puddles. "Oops," Jacob said. Eliza dropped to her knees, trying to salvage what she could, but Thomas stepped on a shirt, grinding it deeper into the mud. "Leave her alone." The voice was young, uncertain. Eliza looked up to see Samuel Chen, the seamstress's 12-year-old son, standing at the corner. His hands were balled into fists, but they were shaking. Thomas turned. "What'd you say, Chinaman?" "I said leave her alone." Samuel's voice cracked halfway through, betraying his fear. "Or what?" Thomas took a step toward the boy. Eliza scrambled to her feet. "Samuel, go home." "Listen to the whore's daughter," Thomas said. "She knows when to roll over." Something hot and sharp twisted in Eliza's chest. She'd spent 18 years swallowing rage, burying it deep where it couldn't get her in trouble. But watching Thomas advance on Samuel, watching that boy shake but stand his ground anyway, something cracked. "Touch him and I'll scream," she said. "I'll scream loud enough that every shopkeeper on this street comes running, and you'll have to explain why the deputy's son is beating up a child." Thomas stopped, turned slowly. "You threatening me?" "I'm promising you." For a moment she thought he might hit her. His fist clenched, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. Was she worth the trouble? But then his father's voice boomed from down the street calling for him, and Thomas spat at her feet instead. "You're not worth it anyway," he said, and walked away, his pack following. Samuel helped her gather the ruined mending. Most of it was destroyed, mud-stained, torn, worthless. 3 days of work, gone. "Thank you," Samuel said quietly. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Eliza stuffed the ruined clothes back in her basket. Go home, Samuel, and next time don't be stupid. She said it harsh, mean even, because kindness was dangerous. Kindness made you soft, made you hope, and hope was the cruelest thing of all. By the time she got back to the Mercer's house, her hands were shaking. She went to the cellar door, but Constance's voice stopped her. Eliza, parlor, now! The parlor meant trouble. Good news was delivered in the kitchen, bad news in the cellar. The parlor was reserved for guests and reckoning. Constance sat in her good chair, the one with the embroidered cushion. Beside her stood a man Eliza didn't recognize, tall, thin, with a face like a hatchet and eyes that priced everything they saw. This is Mr. Blackwood, Constance said, from the mining operation up north. Eliza said nothing. Waited. He's looking for workers, Constance continued. Cooks, laundresses, that sort of thing. I told him you'd be interested. I wouldn't be interested, Eliza said. Constance's smile went tight. Don't be difficult. The mining camps, Eliza said slowly, looking at Blackwood, are where girls go and don't come back. Blackwood's expression didn't change. That's an ugly rumor. It's an ugly truth. Eliza, Constance stood, apologize to Mr. Blackwood immediately. For what? Telling him I'm not interested in dying in a mining camp brothel? The slap came fast. Constance's palm across her cheek, hard enough to snap her head sideways. Eliza tasted blood where her tooth cut her lip. You ungrateful little wretch, Constance hissed. After everything I've done for you. You've done nothing for me, Eliza said. The words came out quiet, but they landed like stones. You took me in because it looked good, because the Reverend's wife is supposed to be charitable. But you've made sure I paid for every scrap of bread, every night in that cellar. We're done pretending otherwise. Constance's face went red, then white. Get out. Gladly. I mean it. Get your things and get out of my house. You have 1 hour. Eliza's stomach dropped. She'd pushed too far, pushed right off the edge. But she kept her chin up as she turned and walked to the cellar, kept it up as she gathered her few possessions. 2 dresses, 1 pair of boots, the copper locket. Kept it up as she walked out the door into the afternoon sun, homeless and furious and terrified. She made it 3 blocks before the fear caught up with her. What had she done? Winter was 6 weeks away. She had no money, no family, no prospects. She'd just burned the only bridge she had. Eliza sat down on the church steps, the same steps where she'd been left 18 years ago, and tried to figure out what to do next. The town moved around her indifferent. Nobody stopped. Nobody asked if she was all right. She was alone. Completely, utterly alone. That's when she saw the notice. It was nailed to the post outside the general store, next to advertisements for land sales and wagon repairs. Big black letters on cheap paper. Public auction. Saturday noon. Household goods, livestock, and miscellaneous items, all sales final. Miscellaneous items. Eliza's blood went cold. She stood, walked to the general store, pushed through the door. The clerk, a nervous man named Peterson, looked up. Miss Mercer put me in an auction, Eliza said. Peterson's face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're... Don't lie to me. Am I in the auction? He looked away. Mrs. Mercer said you owed her for years of room and board. She's within her rights to recoup. You're selling me. Not selling, Peterson said quickly. Just finding you a situation. Someone who can make use of... Eliza walked out before he could finish. Her ears were ringing. The street tilted sideways. They were selling her. Like furniture, like livestock, like nothing. She had 2 days. 2 days to figure out how to disappear, how to run, how to survive in a world that had already decided she was worth less than a horse. She spent those 2 days trying. Tried to find work. Nobody would hire her once word spread about the auction. Tried to leave town. The stagecoach required money she didn't have. Tried to sleep in the church. The Reverend himself chased her out, said she was trespassing. By Saturday morning, she was hungry, exhausted, and out of options. The auction started at noon in the town square. Eliza watched from the alley behind the blacksmith shop as they set up the platform, the same one they used for livestock sales. A small crowd gathered, farmers, shopkeepers, miners on their day off, men looking for bargains. She could run, should run, but where? Into the mountains with no supplies, no skills, no plan? She'd be dead in a week. At least if someone bought her, she'd have food, shelter. Maybe they'd be kind. That hope, pathetic and desperate as it was, made her walk out of the alley at 5 minutes to noon, made her climb the steps to the platform when Constance called her name, made her stand there while the auctioneer listed her qualities like she was a mule. 18 years old, healthy, can read and write, competent at household tasks. Can she cook? Someone shouted. Adequately, the auctioneer said. Laughter from the crowd. Eliza kept her eyes on the horizon, didn't look at their faces, didn't let them see her cry. We'll start the bidding at $5, the auctioneer said. Silence. $5, he repeated. For a young woman who can work. She's too plain, someone called out. More laughter. $4 then? Nothing. Eliza felt heat crawling up her neck. This was worse than being sold. This was being declared worthless in front of everyone she'd ever known. $3, surely someone— $1, a voice said. Rough, deep, unfamiliar. The crowd shifted. Eliza looked down and saw him for the first time. He stood apart from the others, didn't fit with the farmers and shopkeepers. Tall, over 6 feet, with shoulders that spoke of hard labor and a face that looked like it had lost a fight with a mountain. A scar ran from his left eyebrow to his jaw, puckered and old. His clothes were worn but clean, his hat battered. He didn't look at the crowd, didn't seem to care what they thought. He was looking at her. $1? The auctioneer sounded offended. Sir, that's hardly— $1, the man repeated. His voice was quiet, but it carried. Take it, or I walk. The auctioneer looked at Constance. Constance's face was pinched with fury. $1 was an insult, public acknowledgement that Eliza was worth nothing, but she nodded curtly. Sold, the auctioneer said, slamming his hammer. To the gentleman for $1. The crowd dispersed, disappointed there wasn't more entertainment. The scarred man walked to the platform and pulled a coin from his pocket. Silver, not copper. He set it on the auctioneer's table without a word, then looked at Eliza. You got things to gather? He asked. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. Western accent, but not local. Montana, maybe, or Wyoming. No, Eliza said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Nothing. He nodded once. Come on, then. He turned and walked away. Eliza stood frozen for a moment. This was it. This was her life now, sold for $1 to a stranger, then climbed down and followed. She expected him to lead her to a wagon, but he walked to a horse instead. A big bay gelding, trail-worn and patient. You ride? He asked. No. He considered this, then swung up into the saddle and held out his hand. Up behind me. Eliza hesitated. This man was a stranger. She didn't know his name, didn't know where he was taking her, didn't know anything except that he'd paid $1 for her like she was a sack of flour. But what choice did she have? She took his hand. His grip was strong, calloused, and he pulled her up behind the saddle like she weighed nothing. The horse shifted under the extra weight, but didn't complain. Hold on, the man said. Eliza gripped the back of the saddle as they started moving. The town watched them leave. She could feel their eyes, their judgment. Constance stood on the steps of her house, arms crossed. Thomas Pritchard leaned against the saloon, grinning. The whole town seeing her leave with a stranger who'd bought her for pocket change. Let them watch. They rode for 20 minutes in silence before Eliza found her voice. What's your name? She asked. Caleb Voss? Where are we going? My place. Up in the mountains. How far? 3 hours. Eliza absorbed this. 3 hours into the wilderness with a man she didn't know. She should be terrified. Was terrified. But underneath the fear was something else. A strange, fragile relief. At least she was moving. At least something was changing. Why'd you do it? She asked after another mile. Buy me, I mean. Caleb didn't answer for so long she thought he wouldn't. Then, saw what they were doing to you. Didn't sit right. So you felt sorry for me? No. He said it flat, certain. I don't feel sorry for anyone, but I know what it's like when a whole town decides you're nothing. Figured you didn't deserve that. Eliza didn't know what to say. Nobody had ever defended her before. Nobody had ever suggested she deserved better. They rode higher. The town disappeared behind them, swallowed by trees and distance. The air got cooler, thinner. Eliza's legs ached from gripping the horse, and her hands were cramping from holding the saddle, but she didn't complain. The sun was starting to drop when they reached a clearing. A cabin sat in the center, rough-hewn logs, a stone chimney, a small porch. Beyond it, mountains rose like walls, pine-covered and vast. It was isolated, remote, the kind of place where you could scream and nobody would hear. Caleb dismounted and helped her down. Eliza's legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground. "Cabin's not much," he said, leading the horse to a small barn. "But it's warm and dry." Eliza looked around. No neighbors, no town, no escape. "Where do I sleep?" she asked. Caleb glanced at her, and for the first time she saw something like surprise in his face. "Inside. There's a room off the back. It's small, but it's yours." "Mine?" "Yeah." He started unsaddling the horse. "You work, you eat, you sleep. That's the deal. I'm not—" He stopped, jaw working like he was choosing words carefully. "I'm not looking for anything else from you. Understand?" Eliza understood. She understood he was trying to tell her he wouldn't touch her, wouldn't force her, wouldn't treat her like property, even though technically that's what she was. She didn't believe him. Not yet. Men said things. Men lied. But she nodded anyway. The cabin was sparse. A main room with a table, 2 chairs, a fireplace. A door led to what must be Caleb's room. Another door, half the size, led to a space barely big enough for a cot and a trunk. "You can clean up if you want," Caleb said, gesturing to a bucket and wash basin. "There's soap." Eliza washed the dirt from her face and hands while Caleb built a fire. The silence between them was heavy, awkward. She didn't know what to do, how to act. Was she a servant? A slave? A guest? "You hungry?" Caleb asked. "Yes." He pulled out dried meat, bread, and canned beans. Not much, but more than she'd eaten in 2 days. They sat at the table and ate without talking. Eliza kept glancing at him, trying to figure him out. He wasn't young, maybe 35, maybe 40. The scar on his face looked old, but his hands were steady and his eyes were sharp. "You got questions," he said finally. "Ask." "Why do you live up here alone?" "Don't like people much." "So why bring me here?" He set down his fork. "Like I said, didn't sit right, what they were doing." "That's not enough of a reason to buy a person." "It was for me." Eliza pushed beans around her plate. "What do you want from me?" "Work. Keep the place clean, cook, mend things. I'm not here much. I trap and hunt. Sometimes I'm gone for days. You hold down the cabin while I'm out." "That's all?" "That's all." She wanted to believe him, wanted it desperately, but trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "What if I run?" she asked. Caleb looked at her. "You'll die. Winter's coming and you don't know these mountains. You'd last maybe 3 days before the cold or the animals got you." He paused. "But I won't stop you. You want to leave? Leave." It was the most honest answer anyone had ever given her. They finished eating in silence. Caleb showed her where supplies were kept, where the well was, how to work the stove. His instructions were clear, practical, without judgment. When night fell, he gestured to the small room. "Get some sleep. We'll figure out a routine tomorrow." Eliza went to her room, hers, he'd said, like she owned something for the first time in her life, and closed the door. There was no lock. She pushed the trunk against it anyway, then sat on the cot and waited for him to try the handle. He didn't. Hours passed. Eliza heard him moving around the cabin, heard the fire crackling, heard him eventually go to his own room. The cabin settled into silence. She lay down on the cot, thin mattress, rough blanket, but clean, and stared at the ceiling. She was in the mountains, with a stranger, miles from anywhere. And for the first time in years, she wasn't hungry, wasn't cold, wasn't being told she was worthless. Eliza closed her eyes and tried not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you hurt. But sleep came anyway, deep and dreamless, and for one night at least, she was safe. The first week was careful, silent. Caleb left before dawn most days, taking his rifle and his horse, disappearing into the forest. Eliza woke to an empty cabin and a day stretching ahead with nothing but work and quiet. She cleaned, not because he demanded it, but because she didn't know what else to do with herself. Scrubbed the floors until her knees ached, washed every dish, every pot, every surface, mended the holes in his spare shirts, organized the pantry, kept herself busy so she wouldn't think. But the silence got to her. In town, there'd always been noise, horses, voices, hammers, bells. Here, there was only wind and birdsong and the occasional crack of a branch. It made her jumpy. Every sound could be Caleb returning. Every shadow could be something dangerous. She found herself watching the door, waiting, muscles tight. He came back on the third day with 2 rabbits and a grouse, dropped them on the porch and nodded at her. "You know how to clean game?" he asked. "No, I'll show you." He taught her how to skin the rabbits, how to pluck the grouse, where to make the cuts. His hands were deft, economical. He didn't waste words. When he finished, he left her to practice on the second rabbit while he went to chop wood. Eliza butchered it badly. The meat came off in ragged chunks, the skin tore, but when she showed him, he just nodded. "Better. You'll get it." That night she made stew. It was too salty and the meat was tough, but Caleb ate it without complaint. "Good enough," he said. It was the closest thing to praise she'd ever gotten. Days turned into a week turned into 2. Caleb taught her things, how to split kindling, how to tell if meat had gone bad, how to read the weather. He spoke only when necessary, but his instructions were clear. He didn't yell when she made mistakes, didn't hit her, didn't even seem irritated. It confused her. "Why aren't you angry?" she asked one afternoon while they were stacking firewood. He looked at her. "Why would I be? I'm slow. I ruin things. I don't know how to do half of what you need. You're learning. But, Eliza." He set down the log he was holding. "You were raised in a town, doing town work. This is different. Takes time. I'm not going to beat you for not knowing things I never taught you." She stared at him. "That's not normal." "What isn't?" "You, being patient." Something shifted in his expression, not quite sadness, but close. "Yeah, well, maybe I know what it's like to be hit for not being perfect." He went back to stacking wood, and Eliza didn't ask more. But she thought about it. Thought about the scars on his face and hands. Thought about why a man would choose to live alone in the mountains. Thought about what it meant that he'd spent a whole $1 to save someone he didn't know. The next morning, she woke to find fresh deer meat on the table and a note in rough handwriting. "Gone for supplies. Back tomorrow." Bar the door at night. Eliza read it 3 times. He'd left her alone. Trusted her not to run, not to steal, not to burn the place down. She spent the day preserving the meat, cleaning the rifle Caleb had left behind, and trying not to be terrified every time the wind rattled the shutters. When night fell, she barred the door like he'd said, and sat by the fire with the rifle across her lap, praying nothing would test whether she knew how to use it. Morning came quiet and clear. Eliza made coffee and waited. Caleb returned at noon with flour, sugar, salt, and fabric. He also brought news. "Ran into someone in town," he said, unloading supplies. "Says the Mercer woman's been telling people you ran off. Says you stole from her." Eliza's stomach dropped. "That's not true." "I know, but she's trying to make trouble." "Will they come here?" "No." He said it flat, certain. "Town doesn't care enough to come looking, and even if they did, my land's recorded legal. They got no business here." "What if they try anyway?" Caleb looked at her, and for the first time she saw something hard in his eyes. Let them try. It should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years, protected. That night, she cooked better than she had before. The meat was tender, the biscuits almost fluffy. Caleb ate 2 helpings and made a sound that might have been approval. "You're getting good at this," he said. Eliza felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It's just food." "It's good food." She didn't know what to do with the compliment, so she changed the subject. "You said you trap. What do you trap?" "Beaver, mostly. Some fox. Mink, if I'm lucky." "And you sell the pelts?" "Yeah. There's a trader who comes through in spring. Pays decent." "How long have you lived up here?" Caleb set down his fork. 8 years. Alone the whole time? Yeah. That's a long time. It's quiet. He met her eyes. Quiet's underrated. Eliza understood. She'd spent her whole life surrounded by people who hated her. Quiet sounded like heaven. But sitting across from Caleb, eating a meal she'd cooked in a cabin she was starting to think of as home, it was more than quiet. It was peace. The first real test came 3 weeks in. Eliza was hauling water from the well when she heard voices. Male voices, rough and loud, echoing through the trees. She dropped the bucket and ran for the cabin, slammed the door and grabbed the rifle Caleb had taught her to load. Her hands shook as she checked the chamber. 3 men on horseback emerged from the tree line. She didn't recognize them, but she recognized the type, dirty, hard-eyed, looking for trouble. "Hello in the cabin," one of them shouted. "We're just passing through. Need some water for the horses." Eliza didn't answer, kept the rifle pointed at the door. "Come on now, don't be unfriendly." She heard them dismount, heard boots on the porch. "We saw smoke, figured someone's home. Just want to water the horses, maybe trade for some food. We got money." The door handle rattled. Eliza cocked the rifle. The sound was loud, unmistakable. Silence outside. Then laughter. "She's armed, boys." "Just a woman. Probably doesn't even know how to use it." "I know how to use it," Eliza called. Her voice shook, but she forced it steady. "And the man who owns this place will be back any minute. You want to be here when he arrives?" More silence. Then, "What man?" "Caleb Voss." The name landed different than she expected. She heard muttering, heard one of them swear. "Voss lives here?" The voice was uncertain now. "The trapper?" "Yes." "Shit." More muttering. "Didn't know. Sorry, miss. We'll water the horses at the creek." She heard them mount up, heard them ride away. Eliza didn't lower the rifle until the sound of hoofbeats faded completely. Then her legs gave out and she sat down hard on the floor, shaking. Caleb found her there when he returned an hour later. What happened? He was beside her in an instant, checking for injuries. "Men came," Eliza said. Her teeth were chattering. 3 of them. I told them you'd be back soon and they left." "They hurt you?" "No. They heard your name and left." Caleb sat back. His jaw was tight. "You did good. Real good. I was terrified. You were smart. That's better than brave." He helped her up, made her coffee, sat with her until the shaking stopped. "Those men," Eliza said, "they were scared of you. Why?" Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then, "I got a reputation. From before I came here." "What kind of reputation?" "The kind where people know not to cross me." Eliza studied his face, the scar, the hard eyes, the careful way he moved. "What did you do?" "Things I'm not proud of." He met her gaze. "I was different then. Angry, mean, hurt people who deserved it and some who didn't." He paused. "That's why I'm up here, trying to be someone different." Eliza understood that too. Trying to be someone different, trying to outrun the past. "Thank you," she said, "for teaching me to shoot." "You didn't shoot." "I would have. If they'd come through that door." Caleb nodded slowly. "I believe you." That night, he didn't leave her alone again. Winter came early that year, dropping snow and thick blankets that turned the world white and silent. Eliza woke one morning to find frost on the inside of the windows, and Caleb already up, building the fire higher than usual. "Storm's coming," he said without looking at her. "Big one. We need to get the animals secured and bring in extra wood." They worked through the morning, hauling logs from the woodpile to stack inside the barn, checking the roof for weak spots, moving the chickens Caleb had traded for into a sheltered coop. The wind picked up around noon, cutting through Eliza's coat like it wasn't there. "That's enough," Caleb said, seeing her shiver. "Get inside. I'll finish." "I can help." "I know you can. But there's no point both of us freezing." Eliza went inside and made coffee, then soup from the rabbit Caleb had brought in yesterday. By the time he came back, stamping snow off his boots, the cabin smelled like meat and herbs. He paused in the doorway. "Smells good. It's It's ready when you are. They ate while the wind howled outside, rattling the shutters. The storm hit full force around sunset, snow so thick you couldn't see 10 feet past the window. How long will it last? Eliza asked. Day or two, maybe. We got enough supplies for a week if we need it. Have you ever been snowed in here? Every winter. Usually happens 3-4 times. He glanced at her. You scared? Eliza considered lying, then didn't. A little. I've never been in a storm like this. We're safe. Cabin's solid, we got food and wood. Just have to wait it out. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of being trapped in close quarters with a man who barely spoke, who moved around the small space like a wolf in a cage. Eliza tried to stay busy, cooking, mending, organizing things that didn't need organizing. But there were only so many tasks you could do before you ran out of distractions. On the second day, she caught Caleb watching her while she kneaded bread. What? She asked. You always work that hard? What do you mean? You don't stop. Even when there's nothing that needs doing, you find something. Eliza's hand stilled. Is that a problem? No, just wondering why. She wanted to say it was habit, that 18 years with Constance had taught her that idle hands earned punishment, but the truth was deeper than that. If I'm useful, she said slowly, you'll keep me. Caleb set down the trap he'd been repairing. Eliza, I'm not going to throw you out. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. People change their minds. I don't. He held her gaze. You can relax. You can sit and do nothing. You can mess up dinner or forget to sweep. I'm not looking for reasons to get rid of you. Eliza wanted to believe him, but belief required trust, and trust was still a foreign concept. She went back to kneading bread. That night they sat by the fire after dinner. Caleb was working on a new trap, his hands steady and sure. Eliza was mending one of his shirts, trying to make the stitches small and even. Can I ask you something? She said. Yeah. Why don't you ever go to town? His hands paused. Don't like it. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Eliza bit her lip. She'd pushed too far. But then Caleb sighed and set down the trap. I went to town regular when I first moved here, he said. Needed supplies, needed to trade. But people talk, and the things they say about me. He trailed off. It's easier to stay away. What do they say? That I killed a man, that I'm dangerous, that I shouldn't be trusted. He looked at her. Some of it's true. Eliza's needle stilled. Did you kill someone? Yes. The word hung between them. Eliza knew she should be scared, should grab the rifle and run, but she wasn't, because Caleb had never lied to her, never pretended to be something he wasn't. Why? She asked. He deserved it. Caleb's voice was flat. He hurt someone I cared about, hurt them bad, and the law didn't do nothing about it, so I did. What happened to you after? Ran. Ended up here. He picked up the trap again. That's why people don't trust me, and they're right not to. I'm not a good man, Eliza. I'm just trying to be better than I was. Eliza thought about that. Thought about Constance and Thomas, and every person in Forge's Crossing who decided she was worthless before she could prove otherwise. I don't think you're bad, she said. Caleb looked at her like she'd said something in a language he didn't understand. You bought me when nobody else would, Eliza continued. You gave me a place to live, taught me things, never hurt me. That's more than most good people would do. I did it because it was right, I know. She met his eyes. Maybe that's what makes you good. Not what you did before, but what you choose to do now. Caleb didn't say anything, just looked at her for a long moment, then went back to his work. But something had shifted. The silence between them felt different now. Less like strangers, more like two people who'd survived things they didn't talk about. The storm broke on the third day. Eliza woke to sunlight streaming through the window and Caleb already outside digging paths through the snow. She dressed and joined him, her breath fogging in the cold air. How deep is it? She asked. 3 feet in places. We'll need to check the animals. They worked together, clearing snow, feeding the chickens and Caleb's horse, making sure nothing had frozen or broken. The world was pristine and brutal. Beautiful in a way that could kill you if you weren't careful. Eliza was carrying water from the well when she heard voices again. Her stomach dropped. Not more strangers. But when she looked up, she saw a woman on horseback, leading a pack mule. The woman was older, maybe 50, with gray hair braided down her back and a rifle across her saddle. "Caleb Voss," the woman called. "You home?" Caleb emerged from the barn, relaxing when he saw her. "Sarah, didn't expect you this early. Storm pushed me south. Figured I'd check on you." The woman dismounted, then saw Eliza and stopped. "Who's this?" "Eliza. She's staying with me." Sarah's eyebrows went up. "Staying with you? It's not like that." "Sure it isn't." Sarah walked over to Eliza, looking her up and down. "You run away from something?" "Someone bought me," Eliza said. "Caleb bought me." "Bought you?" Sarah's face went hard. She turned to Caleb. "You bought a woman?" "It's complicated." "I bet it is." "Sarah, it's not—" Caleb ran a hand through his hair. "There was an auction in Forge's Crossing. They were selling her like livestock. I couldn't just leave her there." Sarah studied Eliza again, her expression softening slightly. "You all right?" "Yes." "He treating you decent?" "Better than decent." Sarah looked between them, then sighed. "All right, I believe you, but Caleb, you know how this looks." "I know, don't care." "You should. People talk. Let them." Sarah shook her head but didn't argue. She stayed for coffee, trading news from the settlements to the north. A railroad spur was being planned, she said. Would probably reach the territory in a year or two. Prices for land were going up. People were flooding in, claiming whatever they could. "You should register your claim properly," Sarah told Caleb, "before someone tries to take it." "I got papers." "Old papers. You need to file with the new territorial office. Make it official." Caleb frowned. "That means going to town." "Can't avoid it forever." Sarah glanced at Eliza. "Besides, you got someone to think about now." After Sarah left, Caleb was quiet. Eliza found him in the barn, brushing down his horse with more force than necessary. "You don't have to go to town," she said. "Yeah, I do. Sarah's right. If I don't register properly, someone could challenge the claim. And then where would we be?" "We." He'd said we. "When?" Eliza asked. "Soon as the snow melts enough to travel. Week, maybe 2. He paused. "You'll come with me." "What?" "Can't leave you here alone again. Last time you had visitors, remember?" "I handled it." "I know, but I'd rather not risk it." He looked at her. "Unless you don't want to go back there." Eliza thought about Forge's Crossing, about Constance and Thomas, and every person who'd watched her get sold. The idea of facing them again made her stomach turn, but the idea of hiding from them forever felt worse. "I'll go," she said. The weeks before they left were strange. Eliza caught herself caring about things she hadn't cared about before. How she looked, whether her dress was clean, if her hair was presentable. Stupid things, vain things. But she didn't want to walk into Forge's Crossing looking beaten. Caleb noticed. Didn't say anything, but one day he came back from checking traps with a bundle of fabric. "Trader owed me a favor," he said, setting it on the table. "Figured you could use it." It was good fabric, dark blue, sturdy, enough for a new dress. "I don't know how to thank you," Eliza said. "Don't need thanks. Just make something you feel good wearing." She worked on it for 3 days, cutting and sewing by firelight. It wasn't fancy. She didn't know how to make anything fancy, but it fit well and made her feel less like charity. When she wore it the next morning, Caleb looked at her and nodded. "Good," he said. "You look strong." Strong, not pretty, not fine. Strong. Eliza decided that was better. They left on a cold morning in late November. The journey took most of the day, winding down through mountains that were just starting to remember how to be green. Eliza rode behind Caleb again, but this time it felt different. Less like cargo, more like partnership. Forge's Crossing appeared around a bend, and Eliza's chest tightened. Nothing had changed. Same dusty streets, same wooden buildings, same people moving through their same small lives, but she had changed. They rode to the land office first. A clerk with spectacles and ink-stained fingers looked up when they entered. "Help you?" he asked. "Need to register a claim," Caleb said. "Got old papers. Need to update them." The clerk held out his hand. Caleb passed over documents that looked like they'd been folded and refolded 100 times. The clerk studied them, made notes, asked questions about boundaries and water sources. "Everything seems in order," he said finally, "but there's a fee, $5. Caleb counted out coins. "And I'll need both your signatures," the clerk said. "You and your wife." Eliza's head snapped up. "I'm not his wife." The clerk looked confused. "But it says here there's a cabin, improvements, livestock. If you're living there—" "She works for me," Caleb said. The clerk's expression shifted, became something knowing and ugly. "I see." "No," Caleb said, voice hard. "You don't. Still need her signature if she's living on the property. Legal protection. For both of you." Eliza signed. Her handwriting was better than Caleb's, small and careful. The clerk noticed, seemed surprised. "You read and write?" he asked Eliza. "Yes." "Huh." He filed the papers. "You're all set. Claims registered under Caleb Voss with Eliza Boone listed as resident. If anyone challenges it, come back here." They left before the clerk could say anything else. Outside, Caleb was tense. "Sorry about that," he said. "About what?" "The way he looked at you, at us, like we're— I don't care what he thinks." "You should. Talk like that can hurt you." "Let it." Eliza surprised herself with the anger in her voice. "Let them think whatever they want. I know the truth. That's enough." Caleb studied her face, then nodded slowly. "All right." They walked to the general store next. Eliza stayed close to Caleb, feeling eyes on her, people staring, whispering, the same people who'd watched her get sold. Inside the store, Peterson, the clerk, nearly dropped a sack of flour when he saw her. "Miss Boone," he stammered, "I didn't expect—" "We need supplies," Caleb said, cutting him off. He handed over a list. Peterson gathered items with shaking hands. Sugar, salt, coffee, ammunition. When he tallied the cost, Caleb paid without haggling. "Will there be anything else?" Peterson asked. "No," Caleb said, then paused. "Actually, yes. You got any paper and pencils?" "I do." "Add them to the order." Peterson wrapped everything carefully, stealing glances at Eliza like she was a ghost. They were loading supplies onto the horse when Constance appeared. Eliza saw her first, felt her stomach drop, felt old fear crawl up her spine. Constance looked the same, pinched face, hard eyes, mouth set in a permanent line of disapproval. "Well," Constance said, "look what crawled back." Caleb moved slightly, putting himself between Eliza and Constance. "We're just passing through." "I wasn't talking to you." Constance's eyes fixed on Eliza. "I was talking to the thief." "I didn't steal anything," Eliza said. Her voice came out steady, which surprised her. "You stole my time, my resources, 18 years of caring for you, and this is how you repay me? You sold me. I found you a situation which you were too ungrateful to appreciate." Eliza felt heat rising in her chest. All the things she'd never said, never been allowed to say, pushing against her teeth. "You starved me," she said. "You made me sleep in a cellar. You told me every day that I was worthless. That's not caring. That's cruelty." Constance's face went red. "How dare you? I'm done being afraid of you." Eliza stepped around Caleb, facing Constance directly. "You don't own me. You never did. And whatever you told yourself to justify how you treated me, it was a lie." For a moment, Constance was speechless. Then her mouth twisted. "You think you're better now? Living in sin with some mountain hermit?" "I think I'm happier, and that's more than you can say." Constance raised her hand. Eliza didn't flinch, and before the slap could land, Caleb caught Constance's wrist. "Don't," he said quietly. The scar on his face looked darker in the afternoon light. Constance tried to pull away. Couldn't. "Let go of me. Touch her again and you'll regret it." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm promising you." Caleb released her wrist. "We're leaving. Don't follow us. Don't come to my land. Don't speak her name again. Understand?" Constance stumbled back, clutching her wrist. People had gathered, shopkeepers, townspeople, watching the show. Someone whispered. Someone laughed. Constance's humiliation was public now. Complete. "You'll pay for this," she hissed at Eliza. "Both of you." "We already paid," Eliza said. "More than we owed." They left Constance standing in the street, red-faced and furious. Caleb helped Eliza onto the horse, and they rode out of town without looking back. They were a mile out when Eliza started shaking. "You all right?" Caleb asked. "I stood up to her." Eliza's voice was wonder and disbelief mixed together. "I actually stood up to her." "You did?" "I've never done that before." "I know." Caleb glanced back at her. "You were brave." "I was terrified." "That's what makes it brave." Eliza rested her forehead against his back and tried not to cry. But the tears came anyway, not from sadness, but from something she couldn't name. Relief, maybe. Or release. They made camp early, while there was still light. Caleb built a fire and made coffee while Eliza sat and tried to process what had happened. "She'll try something," Eliza said. "Constance. She's not the type to let things go." "Probably." "Doesn't that worry you?" "Some." Caleb handed her coffee. "But we're ready, and you're stronger than you think." "I don't feel strong." "You faced down the woman who made your life hell. You didn't back down, didn't apologize. That's strength." Eliza sipped her coffee. It was too hot, bitter, perfect. "Thank you," she said, "for stopping her, for standing with me." "Don't need to thank me for that." "Yes, I do. Nobody's ever—" Her voice caught. "Nobody's ever defended me before." Caleb was quiet for a moment, then, "Get used to it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Eliza should have been scared, should have been worried about what came next. But sitting beside Caleb, warm and fed and safe, she felt something she'd never felt before. She felt like she belonged somewhere. The journey back took 2 days. They camped again that night, and Caleb taught Eliza how to read the stars, how to find north when everything looked the same. "You think we'll have to go back?" Eliza asked. "To town?" "Maybe. If there's trouble with the claim, or if we need supplies we can't get from traders." "I don't want to." "I know, but running from things doesn't make them go away." "You ran." "Yeah, and it didn't fix anything, just delayed it." He poked at the fire. "Sometimes you have to turn around and face what's chasing you." "Is that what you're doing? Facing things?" "Trying to." Eliza pulled her coat tighter. The night was cold, but the fire was warm, and Caleb's presence was steadier than any walls. "I'm glad you bought me," she said suddenly. "That day. I'm glad it was you." Caleb looked at her. In the firelight, his scar seemed less harsh, his face less guarded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Me too." They reached the cabin late the next afternoon. Everything was as they'd left it, quiet, isolated, safe. Eliza dismounted and stood for a moment, looking at the rough-hewn walls, the smoking chimney, the mountains rising behind. Home. It was home now. She helped Caleb unload supplies, put things away, settle the horse. They moved around each other easily now, a rhythm they'd developed without planning. That night, Eliza made stew from the fresh vegetables they'd bought in town. Real carrots, real potatoes, real onions, luxuries. Caleb ate 3 bowls. "This is good," he said. "Really good." "It's just stew." "It's the best thing I've eaten in 8 years. Eliza felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You're exaggerating." "I'm not." He set down his bowl. "You're good at this. Cooking, keeping house, all of it. You should know that." Constance always said I was clumsy. Constance was wrong about a lot of things. They cleaned up together, then sat by the fire. Caleb had brought back a newspaper from town, and he read it slowly, lips moving over words. Eliza worked on mending, her needle flashing in the firelight. "Says here the railroad's definitely coming through," Caleb said. "1.5 years, maybe 2. Going to change everything." "How?" "More people, more towns, everything." He folded the paper. "So, won't be wilderness anymore." "Is that bad?" "For some folks." He looked at her. For us might be good, means more opportunities, more ways to make money. Do we need more money? Not need, but having it would make things easier, safer. Eliza thought about that, about the future, about possibilities, about a life that extended beyond just surviving day to day. Caleb, she said, what happens when spring comes? What do you mean? I mean, what's the plan? Do I just keep living here, cooking and cleaning? Is that all there is? He set down the newspaper. What do you want there to be? I don't know. More, maybe. I can read and write. I could learn other things. I could be useful in different ways. You're already useful. I know. But I don't want to just be useful. I want to be... She struggled for words. I want to matter. You do matter. To you, maybe. But to the world? I'm nobody. Just a girl someone bought for $1. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Eliza, you're not nobody, and you're worth a hell of a lot more than $1. Don't let what happened define you. Then what should define me? Whatever you choose. It was the right answer, the perfect answer. But it scared her more than anything else he could have said, because choosing meant taking responsibility, meant claiming a future instead of just surviving the present. I don't know how to choose, she admitted. Nobody does at first, but you figure it out. He straightened. Tell you what, winter's coming, so we got time. You think about what you want, and when spring comes, we'll figure out how to make it happen. You'd help me? Of course I'd help you. Why? Caleb met her eyes. Because you deserve better than the hand you were dealt, and because He trailed off, then tried again. Because you matter to me. Not just as someone who cooks and cleans, as a person. Eliza's throat went tight. She didn't know what to say, didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded. They sat in silence after that, but it was good silence, comfortable silence, the kind between people who didn't need words to understand each other. Outside, the first real snow of winter began to fall. Inside, the fire crackled and popped, and for the first time in her life, Eliza let herself imagine a future that didn't involve fear. It felt dangerous. It felt possible. It felt like hope. The letter came in January, delivered by a writer who looked half frozen and wholly annoyed at having to travel this far into the mountains. Caleb opened the door to find him standing there, breath fogging in the cold air. You Voss? The man asked. Yeah. Got a letter. Official business. Need your signature. Caleb took the envelope, studied the seal. Territorial Land Office. He signed the receipt and the rider left without another word, already turning his horse back toward civilization. Inside, Eliza was kneading bread, her hands dusty with flour. Who was that? Courier? Caleb broke the seal and unfolded the letter. His face went tight as he read. What is it? Eliza wiped her hands on her apron. Says there's a dispute over my claim. Someone's challenging the boundaries, saying I don't have legal right to the water access. Can they do that? They're doing it. Caleb read further. Says I need to appear at a hearing in 2 weeks, in Forges Crossing. Eliza's stomach dropped. 2 weeks? Yeah. He set the letter down. This is trouble. Who would challenge your claim? Could be anyone. Railroad wants land for the route. Mining companies need water, or it could just be someone who thinks they can take what I got because I'm not around to defend it. He ran a hand through his hair. Either way, if I don't show up, I lose everything. Then we show up. Caleb looked at her. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. I live here. My name's on those papers too, remember? The clerk said so. That was just a formality. No, it wasn't. Eliza moved closer. This is my home now. Our home. I'm not letting someone take it without a fight. Something shifted in Caleb's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. All right, we fight. They spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Caleb dug out every document he had, original claim papers, survey maps, receipts for improvements. Eliza helped him organize everything, her neat handwriting making lists and notes that Caleb's rough script couldn't manage. You're good at this, he said one night, watching her sort through papers. At what? Making sense of things, seeing what's important. It's just organization. It's more than that. You got a mind for it. He hesitated. You ever think about learning more? Like accounting or clerking? Eliza paused. I never thought anyone would teach me. I can't teach you that kind of thing, but someone could. When this is over, maybe we find someone who can. The idea sat in her chest like a warm coal. Learning, growing, becoming something more than just a survivor. I'd like that, she said. The night before they were supposed to leave, Caleb couldn't sleep. Eliza found him on the porch, staring at the dark mountains. You all right? She asked. Just thinking. About the hearing? About what happens if we lose. He didn't look at her. I built this place. Been here 8 years. It's the only good thing I ever made. Eliza sat beside him on the porch steps. The cold bit through her nightdress, but she didn't move. We won't lose, she said. You don't know that. No, but I know you don't give up easy, and neither do I. She bumped his shoulder with hers. We're tougher than we look. Caleb finally looked at her. In the moonlight, his scar was just a shadow. Yeah, he said. We are. They left at dawn. The journey to Forge's Crossing felt different this time, heavier, like they were riding towards something they couldn't control. Eliza kept going over the documents in her mind, making sure she understood every boundary marker, every survey line, every legal phrase. They arrived the day before the hearing and got a room at the boarding house. The owner, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Hendricks, looked them up and down. 2 rooms or 1? She asked. 2, Caleb said. Mrs. Hendricks sniffed but didn't comment. She led them upstairs to adjacent rooms that smelled like dust and old tobacco. Hearings at the courthouse, 10 o'clock tomorrow, she said. Don't be late. Judge Thornton don't tolerate tardiness. After she left, Caleb knocked on the wall between their rooms. You all right? Fine, Eliza called back. But she wasn't fine. Being back in Forge's Crossing made her skin crawl, made her feel 18 again and worthless. She barely slept. When morning came, she dressed in her good blue dress and tried to tame her hair into something presentable. Caleb was waiting downstairs, looking uncomfortable in clean clothes and a hat he kept adjusting. You ready? He asked. No? Me neither. They walked to the courthouse together. It was a new building, all fresh-cut lumber and self-importance. People were already gathering, townspeople who had nothing better to do than watch other people's misery. Inside, the courtroom was small and stuffy. Judge Thornton sat at the front, a gray-haired man with a face like weathered granite. A clerk sat beside him, pen ready. And at the opposing table sat 2 men Eliza had never seen before. Both wore expensive suits and had the kind of confidence that came from always winning. Who are they? She whispered to Caleb. Railroad men, probably, or their lawyers. One of the men stood as they entered. He was tall, clean-shaven, with cold eyes that assessed them like livestock. Mr. Voss, he said, I'm James Rourke, representing the Western Territory Railroad Company. This is my associate, Mr. Wells. Caleb didn't shake the offered hand. What do you want with my land? Your land? Rourke smiled. That's precisely what we're here to determine. The judge banged his gavel. Everyone sit. Let's get started. The hearing began with Rourke laying out his case. The railroad needed a route through the mountains, he explained. They'd surveyed several options and determined that the most efficient path ran directly through what Caleb claimed as his property. Furthermore, Rourke said, pulling out a map, our research shows that Mr. Voss's original claim was improperly filed. The boundaries listed don't match the current survey markers, and his claim to the water rights is legally questionable. Caleb stood. That's a lie. I filed everything proper 8 years ago. Did you? Rourke's smile widened. Can you prove it? Caleb handed his documents to the clerk. The judge examined them, frowning. These are old, Judge Thornton said, and the handwriting is difficult to read. That's because I wrote them myself, Caleb said. I didn't have money for a lawyer. Nevertheless, Mr. Rourke raises a valid concern. The boundaries are unclear, and according to the new territorial surveys, this water source, he pointed to a spot on the map, falls outside your claimed area. That's wrong. Caleb moved closer. I surveyed that land myself. That creek runs right through my property. With all due respect, Rourke said, a survey conducted by an untrained trapper hardly stands up against professional surveyors employed by the territorial government. Eliza watched Caleb's hands clench. She knew that look. He was about to lose his temper, and that would lose them the case. She stood. May I speak? Judge Thornton looked surprised. You're not a party to this dispute, miss. Actually, I am. My name is on the property registration as a legal resident. That gives me standing. The judge consulted with his clerk, who nodded reluctantly. Very well. What do you have to say? Eliza's heart hammered. Every eye in the room was on her. She felt Constance's gaze burning into her back. The woman was sitting in the gallery, smirking. Mr. Rourke says our boundaries are unclear, Eliza said. But they're not. They're just written in plain language instead of legal terms. She pulled out the copy she'd made of Caleb's original claim. It says here, from the split pine on the north ridge to the 3 boulders by the creek. Those landmarks still exist. Anyone can verify them. That's anecdotal evidence, Rourke said, not legal proof. It's a legal description, Eliza countered. The Territorial Land Office accepted it 8 years ago. If they're changing the rules now, that's not our fault. Judge Thornton leaned forward. Young lady, where did you learn to argue like this? From reading, Eliza met his eyes, and from being on the wrong end of unfair treatment. A murmur went through the courtroom. Rourke's smile faltered. Furthermore, Eliza continued, pulling out another document, when we re-registered the claim last month, the clerk verified the boundaries and accepted them. Here's his signature and the official seal. If there was a problem, he would have said so then. Rourke took the document from the judge, examined it, and his face went tight. This doesn't change the fact that the railroad needs this land for public development. Then they should pay for it, Eliza said, not steal it through legal trickery. That's a serious accusation, Judge Thornton said. It's the truth. They want our land, but they don't want to pay fair value, so they're claiming we don't own it legally, hoping we can't defend ourselves. Eliza's voice grew stronger. But we can defend ourselves. We have the law on our side. Rourke stood. Your Honor, this is absurd. We're talking about progress, about bringing civilization and commerce to this territory. One man's hunting cabin shouldn't stand in the way of that. It's not just a cabin, Eliza said. It's a home, and Mr. Voss has legal right to it, documented and verified. The railroad doesn't get to ignore that just because it's inconvenient. While the judge looked between them, then at the document spread across his desk. He was quiet for a long time. I'm going to recess for 1 hour, he said finally. When we return, I'll give my ruling. Everyone stood as the judge left. Caleb pulled Eliza aside. Where did that come from? He asked. I don't know. I couldn't let them take it. Couldn't let them treat us like we don't matter. You were amazing. I was terrified. You didn't show it. He gripped her shoulder. Thank you. The hour felt like days. Eliza and Caleb sat outside the courthouse, not talking, just waiting. Townspeople walked past, staring. Some whispered. Eliza caught fragments of conversation. That girl from the auction, and living in sin, and who does she think she is? She ignored them, let them talk. She had bigger things to worry about. When they reconvened, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread. This was entertainment now, a show. Judge Thornton entered and everyone stood. He sat, adjusted his spectacles, and looked at the papers before him. This is a complicated case, he began. On one hand, we have a railroad company representing significant economic development for this territory. On the other, we have a property owner with documented claim to the land in question. Eliza held her breath. Having reviewed all evidence, the judge continued, I find that Mr. Voss's claim is legally sound. The original filing, while informal, meets the requirements that were in place at the time. The re-registration confirms and validates those boundaries. Rourke started to object, but the judge held up his hand. However, he said, I also recognize the railroad's need for access. Therefore, my ruling is this. Mr. Voss retains full ownership of his land, including all water rights. The railroad may negotiate to purchase an easement if they wish, but they must offer fair market value. If Mr. Voss refuses to sell, they must find an alternate route. He banged his gavel. Case dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Rourke was on his feet arguing, but the judge had already left. Caleb sat frozen, like he couldn't quite believe it. "We won," Eliza said. "Caleb, we won." He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, he smiled, really smiled. "Yeah, we did." Rourke appeared beside their table. His face was red, his jaw tight. "This isn't over," he said to Caleb. "The railroad will make you an offer. I suggest you take it." "And if I don't?" Caleb stood, matching Rourke's height. "Then you'll regret it. We have ways of making things difficult for people who don't cooperate." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Eliza stepped between them. "We have the law on our side, and we have documentation of everything you just said. So if anything happens to our property, or to us, everyone will know who's responsible." Rourke looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Who are you?" "Nobody important, but I learn fast." He left without another word. Caleb watched him go, then turned to Eliza. "You just made an enemy." "I already had enemies. What's one more?" They gathered their papers and walked out into the afternoon sun. The crowd parted for them, nobody meeting their eyes. Eliza saw Constance standing by the church, her face pinched with rage. "Congratulations," Constance called out. "You won your little case, but that doesn't change what you are." Eliza stopped, turned, walked right up to Constance. "You're right," she said. "It doesn't change what I am. I'm someone who stands up for herself now, someone who fights, someone who matters." She paused. "Can you say the same?" Constance's mouth worked, but no sound came out. Eliza walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. They stayed one more night in Forges Crossing, and the next morning they started the journey home. But halfway there, Caleb pulled the horse to a stop. "What's wrong?" Eliza asked. "Nothing's wrong. I just realized something." "What?" He turned in the saddle to look at her. "You saved us back there, in that courtroom. I would have lost my temper, would have made it worse, but you stayed calm, used your head, made them listen." "You would have done the same." "No, I wouldn't have. I would have fought, but not smart. Not like you did." He paused. "You're not just helping me anymore, Eliza. You're my partner." Partner. The word hit her like a physical thing. "I don't know what that means," she said honestly. "Means we're in this together, equal. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Eliza thought about that, about what it meant to be partners with someone, to build something with them instead of just surviving beside them. "I'd like that," she said. They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence. When the cabin appeared through the trees, Eliza felt something in her chest release. Home. She was coming home. That night they celebrated with a better dinner than usual. Venison Caleb had been saving, potatoes fried in butter, coffee sweetened with sugar. It felt extravagant and perfect. "What do you think they'll offer?" Eliza asked. "The railroad." "Don't know. Don't care." Caleb cut into his meat. "I'm not selling." "You should at least hear them out." "Why?" "Because money gives us options. Security. You could expand the trapline, improve the cabin, buy better equipment." She paused. "Or I could get those lessons you mentioned. Learn accounting or clerking." Caleb considered this. "You really want to learn that stuff?" "I want to be more than I am, want to grow." "You're already more than you think." "Maybe, but I could be even more." He smiled. "All right, when they make their offer, we'll listen, but we decide together whether to take it." "Together," Eliza agreed. The offer came 2 weeks later, delivered by a different courier who looked nervous the entire time he was on Caleb's property. "Mr. Rourke asked me to give you this," he said, handing over an envelope. "He said to tell you it's generous." Caleb opened it. Inside was a letter and a bank draft. Eliza read over his shoulder. The railroad was offering $300 for an easement across the northeast corner of their property. It was a lot of money, more than most people in Forges Crossing saw in a year. "What do you think?" Caleb asked. Eliza studied the map included with the letter. The proposed easement wouldn't affect the cabin or the main trap line. It would cut through some timberland, but nothing they used regularly. I think it's fair, she said, but I also think we should ask for more. More? They came to us with 300. That means they'll go higher if we push. You think we should negotiate? I think we should know our worth, Caleb laughed. Look at you, turning into a businesswoman. Someone has to be smart about this. He told the courier they'd consider the offer and send a response within the week. After the man left, Caleb turned to Eliza. All right, you want to negotiate? We negotiate. What should we ask for? They spent 2 days working out numbers, figuring what the easement was worth versus what the railroad would pay to avoid finding a new route. Eliza did the math, cross-referenced it with land values she'd seen posted in town, added a margin for inconvenience. $450, she said finally. That's what we should ask for. That's 50% more than their offer. They're getting access to land they couldn't take legally. That's worth paying for. Caleb grinned. Remind me never to negotiate against you. They sent their counteroffer with Sarah, who was passing through on her way to the northern settlements. 3 weeks later, the response came. $400. Final offer. We did it, Eliza said, staring at the bank draft. We actually did it. You did it. I just agreed with your plan. Our plan. That spring, everything changed. The money gave them security they'd never had. Caleb bought better traps, improved tools, and a milk cow that Eliza immediately named Bessie, despite his protests that naming livestock was ridiculous. She has a personality, Eliza insisted. She deserves a name. It's a cow. It's Bessie. He rolled his eyes, but Eliza caught him talking to the cow when he thought she wasn't listening. With the remaining money, they hired a tutor. Mrs. Chen, Samuel's mother, agreed to teach Eliza accounting and basic law twice a week in exchange for fresh meat and vegetables. Eliza rode to town every Tuesday and Thursday, spent hours learning numbers and regulations, came home with her head full of new information. You're getting too smart for me, Caleb joked one night. Impossible. You know things I'll never understand. Like what? How to survive out here. How to read animal tracks. How to know when a storm's coming just by looking at the sky. She set down her ledger. You're the smartest person I know, Caleb, just in a different way. He didn't say anything, but his expression went soft. Life settled into a rhythm. Caleb trapped and hunted. Eliza managed the household and studied. They worked together on improvements, a new chicken coop, a larger garden, repairs to the barn. Slowly, the cabin stopped feeling like a shelter and started feeling like something they'd built together. But trouble was coming. Eliza felt it in her bones. It arrived in June, in the form of a man on a spotted horse. Eliza was outside, hanging laundry, when she saw him riding up. He was older, maybe 60, with a face like wrinkled leather and eyes that missed nothing. You Eliza Boone? He called. Who's asking? Name's Garrett. I'm a lawyer from the Capitol. I need to speak with you about a private matter. Caleb emerged from the barn, rifle in hand. She doesn't need a lawyer. That's for her to decide. Garrett dismounted, moving slow and careful. Miss Boone, this concerns your mother. Eliza froze. My mother's dead. Actually, she's not, or wasn't until recently. Garrett pulled papers from his saddlebag. She passed 3 months ago and left some things for you. That's why I'm here. Eliza's world tilted sideways. Her mother, the woman who'd left her on church steps, who'd abandoned her to Constance's cruelty, that mother was dead. And apparently she'd left something behind. What things? Eliza managed. Documents, a letter, and a legal claim. Garrett held out the papers. Your mother owned water rights to the creek that runs through this area, very valuable water rights, and according to her will, they belong to you now. The papers felt heavy in Eliza's hands, heavier than paper should be, because she knew, even before reading them, that her life had just gotten a lot more complicated. Eliza read the documents 3 times before the words started making sense. Her mother's name had been Catherine Boone. She'd owned a ranch 20 miles west of Forges Crossing, bought with money from her first husband who'd died in a mining accident. When Catherine remarried, her new husband wanted the property sold, wanted to move east. Catherine refused. They fought. He left. And Catherine, alone and struggling to run a ranch by herself, had made a choice. She'd given up her daughter to secure the land. Says here she filed the water rights claim in 1851, Garrett explained, pointing to a faded document. That creek runs from the high country all the way down through 3 different properties, including this one and 2 ranches to the south. Whoever controls the water controls everything downstream. Why would she leave this to me? Eliza's voice came out flat. She didn't want me. I don't know her reasons, miss. I just know what the will says. Everything goes to her daughter, Eliza Boone, currently residing with Caleb Voss in the Mountain Territory. Garrett paused. She'd been looking for you, spent the last 5 years trying to find out what happened after she left you at that church. 5 years. Eliza laughed, and it came out bitter. She had 18 years to look. She waited until I was gone. Caleb touched her shoulder. Eliza. Don't. She pulled away. Don't tell me to forgive her. Don't tell me she had her reasons. She abandoned me. Let Constance treat me like dirt for 18 years. And now she's dead and suddenly I'm supposed to care that she left me something? Garrett shifted uncomfortably. There's also a letter, personal, for you. He held out an envelope, yellowed with age. Eliza stared at it like it might bite. I don't want it. You should read it, Garrett said gently. Might explain things. I don't care about explanations. But Caleb picked up the envelope. Read it later, when you're ready, but don't burn it. You might regret that. Garrett stayed for coffee, explaining the legal details. The water rights were legitimate, filed properly, and transferred to Eliza upon Catherine's death. But there was a problem, a big one. There's been challenges, Garrett said. 2 ranchers downstream, the Morrison brothers. They've been using that water for 10 years. They're claiming adverse possession, saying they've got rights because your mother never enforced the claim. Can they do that? Caleb asked. They can try, and they've got money for lawyers. Garrett looked at Eliza. They've also got friends on the territorial council. This won't be a fair fight. When is it ever? Eliza set down her cup. What happens if I just give up the claim? Let them have it? Then you lose any say over water access to this property, and the Morrisons can charge whatever they want for usage rights. Garrett pulled out another map. See here? Your creek feeds into theirs. They could cut you off completely if they wanted. Make it so you can't water livestock, can't irrigate, can't do anything that requires that creek. Caleb swore under his breath. So we fight or we lose everything. Essentially, yes. Eliza stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting everything gold and red. This place had become home. The first real home she'd ever had. And now someone wanted to take it away. Again. When's the hearing? She asked. 2 weeks. In Forge's Crossing, before Judge Thornton again. Of course it was Thornton. Of course it was Forge's Crossing. The universe had a sick sense of humor. We'll be there, Eliza said. After Garrett left, Eliza sat on the porch and stared at the letter. She could feel Caleb's presence behind her, waiting, not pushing. You going to open it? He asked finally. I don't know. Want me to leave you alone? No. She looked up at him. Stay, please. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Eliza broke the seal and unfolded pages that had been written months before her mother died. The handwriting was shaky, old, but the words were clear. Eliza, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did to you was cruel and selfish, and I've lived with that guilt every day since. I was 22 when I had you. Your father was a drifter who moved on before I even knew I was pregnant. I tried to raise you alone for the first 6 months, but I was failing. The ranch was falling apart. I had no money, and you were so small and helpless. I was terrified I'd kill you through my own incompetence. I told myself leaving you at the church was the right thing, that someone better would take care of you, that you'd have a better life than I could give you. I believed that lie for a long time. By the time I realized I'd made a mistake, you were gone. Constance Mercer refused to tell me where you'd gone, said you'd run away. I searched, but I didn't know where to start. This land, these water rights, they're all I have left to give you. I know it's not enough. I know it doesn't make up for what I did, but it's yours. Fight for it. Don't let anyone take it from you the way I let them take you from me. I'm sorry. I know those words are useless, but they're all I have. Your mother, Catherine Eliza, read it twice, then folded it and put it back in the envelope. She didn't cry, didn't rage, just sat there, feeling hollow. She was scared, Caleb said quietly. Doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. You think I should forgive her? I think you should feel however you feel. Anger, sadness, nothing. It's all valid. Eliza leaned against him. I don't know what I feel, except tired. Then rest. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. But sleep didn't come easy that night. Eliza lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about a mother who'd chosen land over a daughter, then spent years regretting it, about water rights and legal battles and men who wanted to take things that weren't theirs. She was still awake when she heard the horses, multiple horses, moving fast. Eliza grabbed the rifle and ran to Caleb's room. He was already up, pulling on his boots. You heard? He asked. Yeah. They moved to the window. In the moonlight, Eliza could see 3 riders approaching. They stopped 50 yards from the cabin, torches in hand. Voss, one of them shouted, we need to talk. Caleb opened the window. It's the middle of the night. Come back in the morning. This can't wait. You got something that belongs to the Morrison family. I got nothing of yours. The water rights. Your woman inherited them, but they're ours. Have been for 10 years. Then you should have filed properly 10 years ago, Caleb called back. We're giving you one chance. Sign them over peaceful, or we make things difficult. Eliza moved beside Caleb, rifle visible in the window. That sounds like a threat. One of the riders laughed. The whore's daughter. Heard you got yourself some education. Think that makes you better than you are? I think it makes me smart enough to know you're trespassing, Eliza said. And that threatening us is a crime. One I'll report to Judge Thornton at the hearing. You won't make it to the hearing if you're not careful. Caleb's voice went cold. You just threatened a woman's life in front of witnesses. I suggest you leave. Now. The riders hesitated. Then one of them threw his torch. It arced through the air and landed near the barn, catching on dry grass. Caleb was out the door before Eliza could stop him. She followed, rifle ready, as he ran for the barn. The fire was small, manageable. He stamped it out while Eliza kept the rifle trained on the riders. You'll regret this, one of them shouted as they rode away. By the time the fire was out, Eliza was shaking with rage. They tried to burn us out, she said. They actually tried. I know. Caleb's face was grim. This is worse than I thought. We have to report this. To who? The sheriff's in the Morrisons' pocket? Judge Thornton might listen, but without proof. I'm the proof. I saw them. I'll testify. Caleb looked at her. You know what that means? Standing up in court against the most powerful family in the territory, they'll tear you apart. Let them try. They spent the rest of the night watching, waiting, making sure the riders didn't come back. When dawn came gray and cold, Eliza made coffee and they sat at the table planning. We need help, Caleb said. We can't fight this alone. Who would help us? Sarah, maybe. She knows people, traders, trappers, people who've had their own run-ins with the Morrisons. Will they testify? Some might, if we ask right. They spent the next week gathering allies. Sarah came through first, bringing 2 other trappers who'd lost access to water when the Morrisons expanded. Mrs. Chen offered to testify about the legal documents. Even Garrett agreed to represent Eliza pro bono, said he was tired of rich men thinking they owned everything. But the Morrisons had their own people, more of them, better connected. By the time the hearing arrived, it felt less like a legal proceeding and more like a war. The courthouse was packed, every seat taken, people standing against the walls. The Morrisons sat at the front with their lawyers, 3 men in expensive suits who looked like they'd never lost a case. Eliza wore her blue dress again, the one that made her feel strong. Caleb sat beside her, solid and steady. Garrett shuffled papers, looking nervous but determined. Judge Thornton entered and everyone stood. He looked older than the last time, tired, like he knew this was going to be ugly. This is a hearing to determine ownership of water rights filed by Catherine Boone in 1851, now claimed by her heir, Eliza Boone, and disputed by Henry and William Morrison on grounds of adverse possession. He looked at both tables. I expect this to be civil. Anyone who disrupts these proceedings will be removed. Understood?" Everyone nodded. The Morrisons' lead lawyer stood first. His name was Hutchins, and he had a voice that filled the room without effort. "Your Honor, my clients have been using the water from Boone Creek for 10 years without interference. Ms. Catherine Boone never enforced her claim, never collected fees, never even acknowledged she owned these rights. Under territorial law, that constitutes abandonment." "Ms. Boone was elderly and ill," Garrett countered. "She couldn't enforce the claim personally." "Then she should have hired someone who could. Instead, she did nothing. And my clients, acting in good faith, developed their ranches based on that water access. To strip that away now would be economically devastating." Eliza leaned toward Garrett. "He's making it sound like we're the bad guys." "That's his job. Don't worry. We'll get our turn." But the Morrisons' case was stronger than Eliza expected. They had surveys showing water usage, receipts for irrigation equipment, testimony from ranch hands who'd worked the land for years. They built a picture of two hard-working ranchers who'd improved wild land through honest labor. They made it sound righteous. When it was Garrett's turn, he stood slowly. He wasn't polished like Hutchins. His suit was old, his voice quiet. But he knew the law. "Your Honor, adverse possession requires proof that the original owner knew about the usage and did nothing. But my client's mother was isolated, ill, and had no way of knowing the Morrisons were using her water." "She could have checked," Hutchins interrupted. "Could she? A sick woman, living alone, 20 miles from the nearest town? How exactly was she supposed to monitor water usage across 3 properties?" "She could have hired—" "With what money?" Garrett pulled out Catherine's financial records. "She was barely surviving. Her bank records show she was on the edge of poverty for the last 5 years of her life." The room went quiet. Hutchins recovered quickly. "Nevertheless, the law is clear. 10 years of uncontested usage establishes it wasn't uncontested." Eliza stood before she could stop herself. "I contest it now." Judge Thornton looked at her. "Ms. Boone, you'll have a chance to testify." "I want to testify now." Garrett touched her arm. "Eliza, wait." "No." She moved around the table. "I have something to say." The judge sighed. "Very well. Approach the witness stand." Eliza walked to the front of the courtroom, every eye on her. She could feel the weight of their judgment, the girl from the auction, the one who'd been sold for $1, daring to stand up to powerful men. She was sworn in, sat down, and looked at Hutchins. "Go ahead," Judge Thornton said. "Ask your questions." But before Hutchins could speak, Eliza started talking. "My mother left me on church steps when I was 6 months old. I was raised by a woman who hated me, who reminded me every day that I was nothing. When I was 18, she sold me at auction because I wasn't worth keeping." "Ms. Boone," the judge said, "this isn't relevant." "It is relevant." Eliza's voice didn't shake. "Because it shows what happens when powerful people decide someone doesn't matter. When they decide that law doesn't apply to them because the person they're hurting is poor or alone or unwanted." She looked at the Morrisons. They were big men, well-fed, confident, the kind of men who'd never been told no in their lives. "You want these water rights because you think I can't defend them, because I'm nobody, because I don't have the money or the connections to fight you." She paused. "You're wrong." "This is a nice speech," Hutchins said, "but it doesn't change the law. The law says those rights belong to me. My mother filed them properly. She owned them legally, and now they're mine. You want them, you pay for them. But you don't get to steal them just because you've been stealing them for 10 years already." "We weren't stealing." "What do you call using something that doesn't belong to you without asking permission, without paying? That's theft." Hutchins' face went red. "Your Honor, this is absurd. The witness is clearly biased." "She's the property owner," Judge Thornton said. "She's allowed to be biased." He looked at Eliza. "Do you have anything else to add?" "Just one thing." Eliza stood. 3 nights ago, riders came to our property. They threatened us, told us to sign over the rights or face consequences. Then one of them threw a torch at our barn, tried to burn us out. The courtroom erupted. Hutchins was on his feet, objecting. The Morrisons were shaking their heads, calling her a liar. Judge Thornton banged his gavel until the noise died down. That's a serious accusation, he said to Eliza. Can you prove it? I saw them. So did Caleb Voss. We can describe the horses, the men, everything. Convenient that there's no other witnesses, Hutchins said. There's evidence. Caleb stood. Burn marks near the barn, fresh hoof prints. We kept the torch they threw. That proves nothing. It proves enough to investigate, Judge Thornton said. He looked at the Morrisons. Did you send men to threaten Ms. Boone? No, Your Honor, Henry Morrison said. His voice was smooth, practiced. We would never resort to intimidation. Then you won't mind if I send the sheriff to verify their alibi for that night. The Morrisons exchanged glances. That won't be necessary. I think it is. The judge made a note. We'll recess until tomorrow morning. I want depositions from both parties about this alleged incident. Court adjourned. Eliza walked out of the courthouse with Garrett and Caleb flanking her. People stared, but differently now. Not with pity or contempt, with something closer to respect. That was risky, Garrett said, accusing them of arson without absolute proof. But it was true, Eliza said. Truth doesn't always matter in court. It mattered today. Caleb put his hand on Eliza's shoulder. You were incredible. They stayed at the boarding house again, but this time Eliza couldn't sleep from anticipation instead of fear. She kept replaying the hearing in her mind, wondering if she'd said enough, if she'd made a difference. Around midnight, someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find Samuel Chen standing there, nervous and fidgeting. Miss Boone, I need to tell you something. Samuel, what are you doing here this late? I heard something at the saloon. I was delivering food from my mother's restaurant, and I heard the Morrisons talking. He looked around nervously. They're planning something for tomorrow. What kind of something? They have a witness, someone who's going to say your mother promised them the water rights before she died, that she told them you weren't her real daughter. Eliza's stomach dropped. Who? I didn't hear a name, just that they're paying him good money to lie. Samuel handed her a piece of paper. I wrote down everything I heard, in case it helps. Eliza took the paper. Thank you, Samuel. This is brave. You stood up for me once, when Thomas and his friends were going to hurt me. I'm just returning the favor. After Samuel left, Eliza showed the paper to Caleb and Garrett. Garrett read it 3 times, frowning. This is good information, but we can't prove it's true without making Samuel testify, and if we do that, he'll become a target. We're not putting that kid in danger, Caleb said firmly. Then we need another plan. Eliza paced the small room. If they have a witness saying my mother denied I was her daughter, we need proof I am. Do you have any? Garrett asked. Eliza thought about it. The locket. She still had the copper locket she'd been wearing when she was left at the church. She pulled it from her bag, she'd brought it without knowing why, and opened it. Inside was a tiny photograph, faded and worn, a woman holding a baby. This was with me, Eliza said, when I was left at the church. Garrett examined it. Can anyone verify this is Catherine Boone? Maybe someone who knew her, someone old enough to remember. They spent the rest of the night making plans. In the morning, they went to the oldest part of town, to a small house where an ancient woman named Mrs. Fletcher lived. She'd been in Forge's Crossing since it was founded. Garrett showed her the photograph. Mrs. Fletcher put on her spectacles and studied it. That's Catherine Boone, she said immediately. I'd recognize her anywhere. We were friends before she married that second husband. She looked at Eliza. You look like her. Same eyes. Can you testify to that? Garrett asked. I can do better. Mrs. Fletcher shuffled to a trunk in the corner and pulled out an old photograph. This was taken at Catherine's first wedding. See? Same woman. It was undeniable. The woman in both photographs was the same person. Will you come to court? Eliza asked. Mrs. Fletcher smiled. Wouldn't miss it. When court reconvened, the Morrisons played their card first. They called a man named Douglas Webb to the stand, a drifter who claimed Catherine had hired him to work her ranch 5 years ago. She told me she never had children, Webb said. Said she couldn't. Said if anyone ever claimed to be her daughter, they'd be lying. Hutchins looked satisfied. So Ms. Catherine Boone explicitly denied having a child? That's right. No further questions. Garrett stood for cross-examination. Mr. Webb, what years did you work for Miss Boone? 1859 to 1860. And how much was she paying you? Webb shifted. $10 a month. That's a lot of money for a woman who was supposedly in poverty. She managed her finances carefully. Or perhaps you weren't actually working for her at all. Garrett pulled out Catherine's financial records. Her bank records show no withdrawals for wages during that period. No notation of any employee named Webb. Webb's face went red. Maybe she paid in cash. Then you'd have receipts. Can you produce any? I didn't keep them. How convenient. Garrett turned to the judge. Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness, but I'd like to call Mrs. Gladys Fletcher. Mrs. Fletcher took the stand with her photographs. She identified Catherine clearly, then looked at Eliza. This girl is Catherine's daughter. Anyone with eyes can see it. Same face, same build, same stubborn set to her jaw. She glared at Webb. And that man is a liar. Catherine never hired him. I knew her for 40 years, and she never once denied having a child. She regretted giving her up every day of her life. The courtroom was silent. Hutchins tried to object, tried to discredit Mrs. Fletcher, but she was unshakable. She'd been in Forges Crossing longer than anyone, had a reputation for honesty, and she wouldn't budge. When the testimonies finished, Judge Thornton called for a recess. 2 hours later, he returned with his decision. I've reviewed all the evidence, he said, the photographs, the testimonies, the financial records. I find that Eliza Boone is the legitimate heir of Catherine Boone and therefore the legal owner of the water rights in question. The Morrisons started to protest, but the judge held up his hand. Furthermore, I find that the Morrison brothers knowingly used these water rights without permission or payment. While adverse possession might have applied if Catherine Boone had been aware and inactive, the evidence shows she was incapacitated and unable to enforce her claim. Therefore, the water rights remain with Ms. Boone. He banged his gavel. The Morrisons have 30 days to negotiate usage terms with Ms. Boone or cease using water from Boone Creek. Case closed. The courtroom erupted again, but this time with different energy. Eliza sat frozen, unable to believe what she'd just heard. They'd won. Actually won. Caleb pulled her to her feet, and suddenly people were congratulating her, shaking her hand. Mrs. Chen, Samuel, Sarah, even people she didn't know. The Morrisons left without a word, their lawyers gathering papers in furious silence. Outside in the afternoon sun, Eliza finally let herself breathe. We did it, she said to Caleb. We actually did it. No, you did it. You stood up to them and won. Garrett approached with papers to sign, official documents transferring the rights, establishing Eliza as legal owner. She signed her name carefully, watching the ink dry on her future. They stayed one more night, celebrated quietly at the boarding house with good food and better company. Sarah brought whiskey, Mrs. Chen brought dumplings, and they toasted to justice and second chances. The next morning, they started for home. But halfway there, Eliza asked Caleb to stop. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing's wrong. I just want to see it. See what? The creek. The one my mother fought for. The one that's mine now. They rode to where Boone Creek ran wide and clear, cutting through a meadow filled with wildflowers. Eliza dismounted and walked to the water's edge. It was beautiful, cold and clean, flowing down from the high country toward the valleys below. This was what her mother had left her, not just water rights, but a piece of land, a piece of the future, a chance to be more than what the world had decided she was. Caleb stood beside her. What are you thinking? That I own something now, really own it. Nobody can take it away. What are you going to do with it? Eliza smiled. I'm going to make the Morrisons pay rent. Fair market rate, legally documented, every month. She looked at him. And then I'm going to use that money to build something. Maybe a school, maybe a library. Something that helps people like me who never got a chance. That's ambitious. I'm done being small. They stood there for a while watching the water flow, planning futures that felt impossible just months ago. When they finally rode home, the cabin waiting in the distance, Eliza felt something she'd never felt before. Power. Not the kind that came from hurting people or taking things. The kind that came from knowing your worth, claiming your space, refusing to be erased. She was Eliza Boone. She owned water rights. She'd stood in court twice and won, and she was just getting started. The Morrisons' first payment arrived 3 weeks late and $10 short. Eliza stood in the cabin holding the envelope, feeling anger burn through her chest. Caleb was outside chopping wood, and she walked to him with the money in her hand. "They're testing you," he said when she showed him, "seeing if you'll let it slide." "I won't." "I know, but what are you going to do about it?" Eliza thought for a moment, then went inside and wrote a letter. Her handwriting was steady now, confident. She wrote that the payment was incomplete and late, that interest would be added per the contract terms, and that future late payments would result in water access being suspended. She signed it, sealed it, and rode to town the next morning to deliver it herself. Henry Morrison was standing outside his ranch house when she arrived. He was a big man who looked like he'd been carved from granite, and he didn't bother hiding his contempt. "You got some nerve coming here," he said. Eliza dismounted and handed him the letter. "Your payment was late and incomplete. This outlines the penalties." He didn't open it, just looked at her like she was something he'd scraped off his boot. "You think you can push us around because you won some court case?" "I think I can enforce a legal contract, which is exactly what I'm doing." "You're making a mistake, girl. We've been patient with you, but that patience has limits." "So does mine." Eliza met his eyes. "The contract states payment is due on the 1st of each month. It's the 23rd. You're 3 weeks late. Next time you're late, I cut off your water access for a week. The time after that, 2 weeks. You want to test me? Go ahead. But you'll lose your cattle before I lose this fight." Morrison's jaw worked. Behind him, ranch hands had stopped working to watch. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right, it's not. Because you owe me $17, plus $3 in late fees. I'll expect payment within 48 hours. She rode away before he could respond, her heart hammering but her hands steady on the reins. When she got back to the cabin, Caleb was waiting on the porch. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I think I just made it worse." "Or better. Sometimes people need to know you won't back down." The full payment arrived the next day, delivered by a ranch hand who wouldn't meet her eyes. Eliza counted it twice, then filed it with the other documents she kept in a wooden box Caleb had made for her. But she knew this was just the beginning. The Morrisons weren't the type to accept defeat. They'd push back, find other ways to make trouble. She needed to be ready. That evening, she spread her accounting ledgers on the table and started planning. The water rights generated income, but not enough to live on. She needed to think bigger. The railroad easement had taught her that land could be profitable if you knew how to leverage it. And she was learning. "What if we bought more land?" she said to Caleb over dinner. He looked up from his stew. "With what money?" "With the water rights income and the easement money we saved. We could buy the parcels adjacent to ours before the railroad drives prices up." "That's a big risk." "Everything's a risk. But if the railroad comes through like they're planning, land values will double. Maybe triple." Caleb set down his spoon. "You've been thinking about this a lot. Mrs. Chen's been teaching me about property investment. She says the smart money's in land, not gold." "You trust her advice?" "More than I trust most people's." Eliza pulled out a map she'd drawn. "Look, if we bought these 2 sections here, we'd control access to the entire northern valley. Anyone wanting to run cattle or build would have to negotiate with us." Caleb studied the map. "That's ambitious." "I'm tired of just surviving. I want to build something." "We," Caleb said quietly. "What?" "You keep saying I, but it's we. We're partners, remember?" Eliza felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You're right. We. Do you think we should do it?" "I think you're smarter about this than I am. If you say it's a good investment, I believe you." They spent the next month researching parcels, talking to land agents, crunching numbers. Eliza's lessons with Mrs. Chen expanded to include contract law and negotiation tactics. She learned to read deeds, spot hidden clauses, recognize when someone was trying to cheat her. She was good at it, better than good. By late summer, they'd purchased 2 adjacent parcels for a total of $600, most of their savings. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. They owned over 300 acres now, most of it undeveloped but valuable. News spread. People in Forges Crossing talked about the girl who'd been sold at auction now buying up land like she had money to burn. Some admired it, most resented it. Constance, Eliza heard through Sarah, was apoplectic. The woman who'd called her worthless was now watching her former ward become one of the larger landowners in the territory. But success brought new problems. The trouble came in September when Eliza rode to town for her weekly lesson with Mrs. Chen and found the restaurant closed. A sign on the door said, "Gone to care for family emergency." Eliza asked around and learned that Thomas Pritchard, the deputy's son who'd tormented her years ago, had gotten into a fight with Samuel, put the boy in the clinic with a broken arm and cracked ribs. She went to the clinic immediately. Samuel was in bed, his arm splinted, his face bruised and swollen. Mrs. Chen sat beside him, her eyes red from crying. "What happened?" Eliza asked. "Thomas and his friends," Mrs. Chen said. Her voice shook with rage. "They said Samuel was talking out of turn, that he'd testified against the Morrisons and needed to learn his place." Eliza's blood went cold. "This is because of me. This is because of them," Mrs. Chen said fiercely. "Because they think they can hurt anyone who stands up to them." Samuel tried to speak, winced. "I'm okay, Miss Boone." "No, you're not." Eliza looked at his injuries and felt fury rising. "Did anyone see what happened?" "Half the town saw," Mrs. Chen said. "Nobody did anything, and the deputy won't arrest his own son. Then we'll go over his head." "To who?" "The territorial marshal is 3 days away. By the time he gets here, it'll be our word against theirs." Eliza stood. "Then we make sure there's more than just words." She spent the rest of the day gathering witnesses. Most people were too scared to talk, but a few, shopkeepers who were tired of the Pritchards running roughshod, farmers who'd had their own run-ins, agreed to give statements. Eliza wrote everything down, got signatures, documented times and places. When Caleb heard what she was doing, he rode to town immediately. "You're going after the deputy's son," he said. "Not a question. He hurt Samuel because Samuel helped us." "I know, and I agree Thomas needs to face consequences. But Eliza, this is dangerous. The deputy won't let this go." "I don't care." "I care. Because if something happens to you—" He stopped, jaw working. "I can't lose you." The words hung between them. Eliza looked at Caleb and saw fear in his eyes, real fear, not for himself, but for her. "I have to do this," she said quietly. "If I don't stand up for Samuel, I'm no better than all the people who didn't stand up for me." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right. But you don't do it alone. We do it together." They filed a formal complaint with the territorial marshal's office, included all the witness statements and documentation of Thomas's history of violence. It took 2 weeks for the marshal to arrive, but when he did, he was thorough. Thomas was arrested. The deputy tried to interfere, but the marshal had authority over local law enforcement. Thomas spent 3 days in a cell before his father posted bail, and a trial date was set for November. The Pritchards were furious. So were the Morrisons, who saw the arrest as part of a larger attack on the established order. They started a whisper campaign. Eliza was power-hungry, they said. Vindictive, using her money and influence to destroy good families. Some people believed it, but others had seen Thomas terrorize the town for years. They'd seen the deputy look the other way while his son hurt people, and they were tired of it. The trial was quick. Too many witnesses, too much evidence. Thomas was found guilty of assault and sentenced to 6 months in the territorial prison. When the verdict was read, his father stood and pointed at Eliza. "This is your fault," he said. "You brought trouble to this town." "No," Eliza said. She stood too, faced him across the courtroom. "You raised a son who thought he could hurt people without consequences. I just made sure he was wrong." The deputy looked like he wanted to hit her, but Judge Thornton banged his gavel and had him escorted out. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Eliza expected anger, maybe violence, but what she got was something different. Mrs. Chen approached first, took Eliza's hand. "Thank you. For Samuel." Then others came forward. A farmer whose son Thomas had beaten 2 years ago. A shopkeeper whose daughter Thomas had harassed. People who'd been too afraid to speak up before but found courage in Eliza's example. Not everyone was supportive. Constance watched from across the street, her face twisted with hate. The Morrisons left without a word, but their expressions promised retribution. But for the first time, Eliza had allies. Real ones. People who saw her as more than the girl from the auction. That night, back at the cabin, Caleb built up the fire and they sat in comfortable silence. Eliza was exhausted, physically, emotionally, completely drained. "You're changing things," Caleb said. "In town, people are talking about you different now. Some people hate me more than ever." "Yeah, but others respect you. That's new." Eliza pulled her knees to her chest. "I didn't want any of this. The land, the water rights, the attention. I just wanted a quiet life." "No, you didn't?" She looked at him. "What?" "You never wanted quiet. You wanted justice, wanted to matter, wanted the world to see you weren't what they said you were." He poked at the fire. "You're getting that, but it comes with a cost. Is it worth it? That's for you to decide." Eliza thought about Samuel's broken arm, about the threats, about the way some people looked at her now with fear instead of contempt. She thought about the money in her account, the land in her name, the future she was building. "Yeah," she said finally, "it's worth it." Winter came hard that year. Snow piled up in drifts taller than Eliza, and the temperature dropped so low that water froze in the bucket overnight. They were snowed in for weeks at a time, just the two of them and the animals, the world reduced to the cabin and the fire and each other. It was during one of those long, quiet evenings that Caleb finally told her his full story. They were sitting by the fire, Eliza mending and Caleb cleaning his rifle. Outside, wind howled and snow fell in sheets. "The man I killed," Caleb said suddenly. "His name was Jack Brennan." Eliza's needles stilled. Caleb had never volunteered this information before. "He owned a ranch outside of Montana. I worked for him for 3 years. Good job. Decent pay." Caleb's hands moved mechanically over the rifle. He had a daughter, Mary. She was 16, sweet kid, smart, wanted to be a teacher. Eliza didn't say anything, just listened. Brennan had a foreman named Cole. Mean drunk, but good with horses, so Brennan kept him on. One day I came back early from checking fence lines and found Cole in the barn with Mary. She was crying, her dress was torn. Caleb's voice went flat. "He was hurting her." "What did you do?" "I pulled him off her. He came at me with a knife. We fought. I got the knife away and He stopped. "I didn't mean to kill him, just wanted him to stop. But he hit his head on a post when he went down and that was it." "What happened to Mary?" She told her father what Cole had done. I thought Brennan would understand. But Cole was his friend, had been for 20 years, and I was just hired help. Caleb set down the rifle. "Brennan had me arrested for murder. Said I'd attacked Cole without cause. Mary tried to testify, but her father wouldn't let her. Said she was confused, traumatized, didn't know what she was saying." "So you ran?" "Yeah, broke out of the jail and ran, and came here, changed my name, tried to start over." He finally looked at her. "I'm a wanted man, Eliza. There's probably still a warrant out for me. If anyone ever figures out who I really am, I'll hang." Eliza set down her mending. "What's your real name?" "Does it matter?" "I guess not." She moved closer to him. "You saved that girl. You did the right thing. The law doesn't see it that way. The law's wrong sometimes. We both know that." Caleb smiled, but it was sad. "You're not scared? Knowing you're living with a fugitive? Scared of you? Never." Eliza took his hand. "You're the best man I know, Caleb. Whatever name you use." He squeezed her hand, didn't let go. They sat like that for a long time, the fire burning low, the snow falling outside. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not judging me. Thank you for saving me. From that auction. From Constance. From thinking I was worthless." "You were never worthless. I know that now, because you showed me." Something shifted in the air between them. Caleb was looking at her differently, and Eliza realized she was looking at him differently too. Not as the man who'd bought her, not even as her partner, but as someone she cared about, someone who mattered. "Eliza," he said. His voice was rough. "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I'm in love with you." The words hit her like a physical thing. She stared at him, unable to process what she'd just heard. "I know I shouldn't be," Caleb continued. "I know the way we started. It's wrong. You were vulnerable and I had power over you, and I swore I'd never. He stopped, took a breath. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being the girl I saved and started being the woman I can't imagine living without. And I needed you to know. Eliza's heart was racing. Caleb, you don't have to say anything. I just needed to say it. Because if something happens, if the law catches up with me or the Morrisons come after us or anything else, I needed you to know that you changed my life, made it worth something. Eliza was crying. She didn't know when she'd started, but tears were streaming down her face. I love you too, she said. The words came out shaky but certain. I didn't know what it was at first, but I love you. Not because you saved me, but because of who you are, because you're kind and patient, and you see me as more than what I was. Caleb cupped her face, wiping tears with his thumb. You were always more. I just helped you see it. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, like she was something precious. Eliza kissed him back, and it felt like coming home, like finding something she hadn't known she was looking for. When they pulled apart, Caleb was smiling, really smiling, the scar on his face crinkling. So what now? He asked. Now we keep building, keep fighting, keep proving everyone wrong. Together? Together. Spring came late but spectacular, the mountains erupting in wildflowers and new growth. The railroad finally arrived, bringing chaos and opportunity in equal measure. Forges Crossing doubled in size almost overnight. New buildings going up so fast you could watch the town transform week by week. Eliza and Caleb sold a small parcel to the railroad for the depot, negotiated hard, and got twice what they'd been offered initially. With that money, Eliza did what she'd promised herself. She bought the old church building, the same one where she'd been left as a baby, and converted it into a school. She hired Mrs. Chen to teach, brought in books from the capital, opened enrollment to any child regardless of their ability to pay. The rich families protested, said their children shouldn't have to learn alongside poor kids or Chinese kids or anyone they deemed unworthy. Eliza told them their children could attend or not, but the school wasn't changing. Most of them came anyway. Because the school was good, and their children learned, and eventually even the most stubborn parents had to admit that maybe worth wasn't determined by birth. Samuel was her first graduate. He'd healed from the attack and threw himself into his studies with fierce determination. When he received his certificate, he gave a speech about second chances and the people who fight for them. Eliza cried through the whole thing. The Morrisons never accepted defeat gracefully, but they learned to work with her. They paid their water fees on time, negotiated in good faith, and eventually even admitted that maybe a woman could handle business after all. Constance died in the winter of 1863, bitter and alone. Eliza didn't go to the funeral, but she did buy the house where she'd been mistreated and turned it into housing for women who needed a safe place to start over. It felt like justice. Judge Thornton retired the following year, but before he left, he came to the cabin to visit. Eliza made coffee, and they sat on the porch while he told her she'd changed the territory. How? She asked. By refusing to accept what everyone said you were. By fighting back. By showing other people they could fight too. He sipped his coffee. You made us all look at ourselves and ask if we were being fair. Some didn't like the answer. But things changed. Things are changing, slowly, because of people like you. After he left, Caleb found Eliza on the porch, staring at the mountains. You all right? He asked. I was just thinking about that day, at the auction. What about it? If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't stepped forward, she turned to him. My whole life would be different. Maybe, or maybe you would have found another way. You're stubborn like that. Eliza laughed. True. Caleb sat beside her. I've been thinking about something. What? About us. About making this official. Eliza's heart skipped. Official how? Marriage. If you want. I know it's probably not what you dreamed of, marrying a wanted man with a scarred face and a past he can't escape. Yes. Caleb stopped. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Not despite those things, but because of who you are in spite of them. She took his hand. You're the bravest person I know, Caleb, and I'd be honored to be your wife. They married in October, in the meadow by Boone Creek, with Sarah and Mrs. Chen and a few close friends as witnesses. No preacher, neither of them wanted that, just simple vows they wrote themselves. Caleb promised to stand beside her, to trust her judgment, to build a life together. Eliza promised to love him, to fight alongside him, to never stop growing. When it was over, Sarah brought out whiskey, and they toasted to new beginnings. That winter, the first winter as husband and wife, Eliza discovered she was pregnant. The news terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She thought about her mother, about the choice Catherine had made, about whether she could be a better parent than the one she'd had. "You're already better," Caleb said when she voiced her fears, "because you're asking the question." The baby came in June, a girl with dark hair and eyes like her mother's. They named her Catherine, but called her Kate. Eliza held her daughter and made a silent promise that this child would never doubt she was wanted, would never feel worthless, would grow up knowing she mattered. Life wasn't perfect. The Morrisons still caused trouble sometimes. Money was tight when cattle prices dropped. Caleb still worried that his past would catch up with him, looked over his shoulder when strangers came through town. But they had each other. They had land and a home and a future they'd built from nothing. They had a daughter who would grow up free and strong and certain of her worth. One evening, 5 years after the auction, Eliza stood on the porch and watched the sun set over the mountains. Kate was asleep inside. Caleb was fixing a fence near the barn. The school had graduated 15 students that spring. The town had a new mayor who actually listened when people spoke. The railroad had brought prosperity but hadn't destroyed the wilderness. Things were good. Not perfect, but good. Caleb joined her on the porch, wiping dirt from his hands. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how far we've come. About what we've built. We built it together." "Yeah, we did." Eliza leaned against him. "Do you ever regret it? That day at the auction? Spending a whole $1 on you?" He smiled. "Best money I ever spent." "I was thinking the same thing. Best day of my life, even though it didn't feel like it at the time." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the light fade from the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. The mountains stood eternal and indifferent, as they always had. But Eliza had changed them in her small way, had carved out a space where worth wasn't given but claimed, where dignity was a right not a privilege, where a girl sold for $1 could become a landowner, a mother, a woman who shaped her world instead of being shaped by it. She'd been called worthless, unwanted, nothing. And she'd proven every single one of those words wrong. "Come on," Caleb said, offering his hand. "Kate will be up soon, wanting dinner." Eliza took his hand, let him pull her close. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me, when nobody else did." "I should be thanking you for saving me right back." They walked inside together, into the home they'd built, the life they'd fought for, the future they were creating with every choice, every day, every moment of refusing to be less than they were. The door closed behind them, warm light spilling from the windows. And in the gathering darkness, the cabin stood solid and sure, a testament to survival, to love, to the kind of strength that comes from being broken and choosing to rebuild. Eliza Boone had come to these mountains as cargo, property, a thing to be bought and sold. She'd become a force to be reckoned with, and she was just getting started,